Lord. Kristen, welcome to the Dr. Tom Show. It is so exciting to have you on here today. I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a long time. We've known each other for crazy amounts of time, and you've been a real positive influence on my life, whether you know that or not, with the stuff that you put out, and food, the relationships to food, and the positive impact that you have on this planet. I just know what you're going to share today is going to make a huge difference to people's lives. So thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. What an honor and what an intro.
So you sent me a little thing through before, and it was on the 4 levels of eating. And this was brilliant when I read it. And we'll probably get into a lot of this today. But if you could just give an overview of, because a lot of us are just like, well, I just have food because it's lunchtime and food because it's dinner time. What are the 4 levels of eating?
Exactly. What are they? Why do we need to think about it, right? It's kind of funny. So I'll tell a little backstory. I have my practice in a really small community, and I ran into the guy who owns the grocery store. And I said to him, so my practice is just over the way, and nice to meet you, and da 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 da. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a nutrition consultant. And he was like, what? Don't people just eat? Don't people just eat? I thought that was awesome. I was like, yeah, they do just eat. And sometimes that is part of the problem. So I went to a fantastic school in California. It was founded by Dr. Ed Bowman. It's a holistic foods and culinary arts school. And he has basically gone through this sort of concept of these levels of eating, right? So you have 4 levels. And the first level, I think we can identify with, it's kind of an immature way of eating. You sort of like, you eat what you eat because you like it, you know, and you eat as much of it as you want. And eating, the level 1 eating is really eating for pleasure, right? So you might eat very stimulating foods like donuts and coffee and Red Bull, and it's because you like it, right? It gives you something. It's often very cheap. It's fast. I'm thinking drive-through window, and food that is just, it's just not good for you. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the planet, and it's not sustainable for your body if you're eating that, if you're fueling your body solely on things that give you immediate gratification. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
So there's the second level of eating as well. It's not so far removed from the first level of eating. So level 2 is kind of eating for energy. And I can make a kind of a dramatic example and think of like a long haul trucker who might have to eat a huge breakfast, and then he really needs to hit the road and drive for say 6 hours, 7 hours. He can't really stop to eat. Probably he eats in the car, but that's not really the issue for this example. Someone who just wants to eat a bunch and forget about it, right? They don't want to be worried about nibbling or having a healthy snack. And then people are really eating calorie dense food, not necessarily nutrient dense food. So pizzas and burgers and vegan and vegetarians, they're not off this list here either, you know, like vegan burgers and plant-based things that are just really heavily processed. There's really no thought to where the food comes from, how it's produced, if there's artificial flavors and maybe pesticides, and yeah. So it's not a very conscious way of eating, this eating for energy. Level 3 would be eating for recovery. So if you have too much eating for gratification and too much eating for energy, you're going to have probably poor body composition, mood swings. You're going to get to a point where you're like, I need to do something. So when I say eating for recovery, I'm not saying like, how do you recover after that CrossFit workout? I'm thinking like, you have seen that your lifestyle habits have brought you to a certain place where you need to do something. And it's usually kind of drastic. Like, you know, I guess it was big in the 80s. Maybe it's still big. I'm a little naive, but like Weight Watchers, where you really count the calories, you get super restrictive, you're pretty judgmental, like there's good foods and there's bad foods. Or like fruit juice cleanses that go for way too many way too many weeks. It could be a restrictive way to eat for a short period of time, but it's definitely not somewhere where you want to stay for ever and ever. So that brings me to level 4, which is eating for health. And eating for health is really individualized. It takes into consideration where you live, how you've adapted, how generations have adapted before you. You think about sustaining the individual, nourishing the individual, sustainable means for the planet, that there's a conscious connection about what we grow and what we bring to the table and what we ingest and how much of it we ingest. There's also a little like acronym I like to use and I like to recommend to my clients to eat soul food. Soul, seasonal, organic, unadulterated, and local. And seasonal is self-explanatory. Organic, whenever you have the money for it, as often as you can. Unadulterated is no pesticides and preservatives. And local is as local as can be. And I know it's a global village, but if you can eat local, you're supporting the local community, you're supporting your microbiome, not just the gut microbiome, but you know, have you seen Pigpen on the Peanuts? He's sort of walking along and he has this dust cloud around him. All of us, our skin, our hair, this sort of field around us is our microbiome. It's the bacteria that we're made of. So when we can eat local, we can really nourish ourselves. So I hope that was a good, understandable, digestible explanation of the 4 levels of eating.
I think it's brilliant, and it really opened up my thinking of it. And when you first started off, you know, pleasure foods are not sustainable for us, and I know, you know, I instantly think sugar spikes and sugar drops, caffeine and caffeine again. But then when you said it's also not sustainable for the planet, I love that. And then you full circled it back to this local food, which is obviously going to be sustainable for the planet, keeping it within season, which is obviously going to be sustainable. So maybe just riff a little bit on the importance of food being in line with keeping our planet healthy as well. Like, how important is that?
Well, I think it's very, very important. The thing that really strikes me is that when we're young, we sort of appreciate everything, right? I can remember, actually, I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So just when they were like 4, 5, you know, when they can really start to walk quite good in the forest or go on a hike, how just happy they were on a walk like that. And if we found food, like accidental foraging, if they found some blueberries or something in the wild Norwegian forest, they'd be like, oh, this is blueberries. I learned about this in kindergarten. Can I eat it? And they would be so conscious and so grateful and so awake. It wouldn't be like when you put a pasta dish in front of them in the evening, right? They would, you know, they would pick it and they would look at it and the salivation would be happening in their mouth and then they would eat it. So there's a totally different connection. I think we lose that as we age because, hey, we have our cell phone and we have whatever else that we need to make sure that we're on track and on time and someone's always pulling for our attention. So that sort of, that grateful feeling of the towards the farmer, the gratitude that you just digest without having to think about it. I think we've kind of lost that. So when I start talking to my clients about sustainability and appreciation, if we can support local farmers, then we have business that's local, right? We support the business, which is another body that should be nourished. And I think that it's not healthy to be bringing in everything from all over the world all of the time. Now, we are currently in a very special situation, And we know that flying things here and there and showing up at the store at any time we want is actually not okay. Like, we've been adapting to a situation that if we had more local business, we maybe wouldn't have felt in the same way. Like, we're not hoarding toilet paper here in Norway, but that kind of mentality, that scarcity mentality, it wouldn't even exist if it was Joe or John from up the street, right? That produced the majority of your food. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it's
brilliant, especially as we pertain to the fact that you're right. Like, this is being recorded during, COVID-19, thick of it in 2020, and it's certainly made me more creative and appreciative for what's actually in my cupboard. Not going and getting something else, actually using what I've got. I love what you said there about being conscious and aware of your foods. Like, so many of us just put the food and just go straight to eating. I do think there's a place, whether it's your religious belief or just your soulful belief, as it is for me, of that pause before you eat, that grace, that thanks. How important is that to the experience of eating, that conscious side of eating? How important is that?
I think on so many levels, it's so important. You are, giving a moment to the people that created all this lovely food, not just the person standing in your kitchen, hopefully, who you appreciate for cooking the food, but the whole cascade that happened before that person got their hands on the ingredients. But you're also taking a minute to get your body ready. We used to say, you are what you eat, but it's actually not true. You are what you assimilate. You are what you actually take in to every cell and organ, So if you don't take that time and you're leaning over the sink and you're shoving a piece of bread in your mouth while you yell at your children to hurry up and get their football shoes because you're late for practice, your body isn't ready. Your body is in stress mode, not rest and digest mode, something you know a lot about as a chiropractor. So it just doesn't fit. So when you sit down to enjoy a meal, you need to sit down, smell it, look at it, get salivation started, and really get in the mode. Like, now I'm going to eat and be grateful and be right here in this present moment and enjoy my food. So I think in order to assimilate it properly and to use all the nutrients that is placed in front of you, you definitely take that time to breathe and say a prayer, or I don't know, just be grateful.
That's so true. It's really funny if you actually think about it. You actually flip it all around. I'm looking at this tree outside my window, and I'm looking at the grass and looking at the planet and how everything, not long ago we were in the fall, and then we went into the winter, and everything that fell has now gone into the soil and created the plants. And at the end of the day, we're going to do that as well. We're going to turn into this planet again. Like, we've come from this planet, we'll turn back into this planet in terms of our physical body. And so we should be extremely grateful for everything that it gives us, everything. And like you say, be cautious of how much we're planting, how much we bring to the table, how much we take out. We are keeping this organism going. We can't just take from it because it is finite, isn't it?
I think as well, like, it doesn't have to be super complicated. You can have a fantastic garden in your windowsill. Like, all of the little herbs that you can grow in your windowsill, they're so full of antioxidants, which help you process a natural process that's happening all the time in your body with free radicals just because you are metabolizing. So little things like that, cherry tomatoes, chilies are super easy to grow in the windowsill, right? So you can kind of get your fingers in the dirt every once in a while. So it's great for your microbiome. It's great for gratitude. It's great to teach your children where things come from on a small scale so they understand the big picture. And like you were getting at, we are going to return to the earth. And if we go even before to the beginning of the call with these levels of eating, when we do not give the body what it needs, the body is smart. So you will take the nutrients you need in order to get through the day from your bones, from your tissues, from your organs. That brain fog you're getting every afternoon is because you're not getting enough essential fatty acids. They need to be digested. If you don't get them, your body will create other means in the body, you know, it will adapt, but you might not adapt so well. So it's super important to just figure out what you're lacking, look at your daily habits, be grateful, organize your fridge. You know how we're talking about, wow, what is her name? Mary Kondo, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
And she gets everything so organized in her closet and in her garage. But what about your pantry? What about your refrigerator, right? Like, this is where I keep my proteins. These are the kind of proteins I ingest. You have another area in your fridge where you keep all your carbs. And if you only see refined packaged carbs there, light bulb, right? Red flag.
Yeah.
I'm not buying starchy vegetables. I'm not buying green leafy vegetables. You just, it's easier to pivot when you're in that mindset to make a plan than you're hungry and you go to the fridge to make whatever is there. And what you were saying about as well, being this situation where you can't necessarily stop into the grocery store every day on the way home from work. So you're actually doing a weekly shop, which is so good, and planning meals, and it has to fit together, and then you're not overeating. There's less food addictions, right? Because you're making it last for the week until you get back to the shops again. So I think it's sort of like a ripple effect when you start looking at your habits and really planning for success, like with anything.
That comes to my next point, because we talk about pleasure and we talk about energy, and then recovery is the way you kind of suddenly go, crumbs, I've got to deal with that. But with the recovery, you'll drop straight back down, I assume, into pleasure and energy. How do you make the leap to eating for health? What couple of practical tips can we help people with in terms of eating for health? Where can they start?
Wow, I love this question. I like to look at food quality first, hydration, like you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like to look at fasting. So everyone should do a seasonal fast once every 3 months or so. But also, oh, that is incredibly embarrassing. So also
Live for you. I've got
sorry, I
someone
turned it
banging at
off.
the window. My auditor's going to have great fun tripping this down. Anyway,
Oh,
go on.
oh gosh, I'm actually crying a little bit. It's embarrassing. S- Quality of fasting, that's where I was at.
So,
You should do like you should be aware of when you're eating. That's what I'll say. Some people do great on 3 meals a day, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. More or less 3 to 4 hours between, and they're great. Other people are eating throughout the day, the whole day, kind of grazing all the time, and they're not really feeling that they're satiated. So we have habits, or rather I could say people have habits. They walk into my office and they're like, this is what I'm doing now, but this is what I want to do. So the grazer might really want to work out more, but they just don't have it in them. I'm eating all the time, but I just don't have the energy to work out. So eating for health for that individual might be boosting proteins a little bit and reducing, not the amount of calories in the day, but reducing that window of eating. And it doesn't have to be intermittent fasting right away, but we know that when we eat, doesn't matter what we eat, we're going to get a spike in our insulin. So if you're always digesting, your body can't look at renewing and replenishing. So eating for health means a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but definitely drink water, give your belly a little bit of a break, have those fasts throughout the day. And also we want to see if what an individual is eating is enough, or do we require some sort of supplementation? Most people need to improve their quality of protein sources, and they're not eating enough vegetables. If they're eating fruits and veg, it's more fruits than veg, which is also nice to eat. right? Whereas it is the veggies that you want to really base your diet on, a plant-based diet, even if you do incorporate animal proteins, because that's where your vitamins, your minerals, and your energy is really coming from.
Which makes so much sense. And I've certainly noticed a difference in my elevation of energy since cutting out breakfast. Like that fasting time, just my body feels so much calmer from doing that. Which is something that, you know, that we really enjoyed and noticed the benefit from. And give me that stomach a break. Give me that, because I was typically a grazer, just busy,
Mm-hmm.
busy, graze. And I'm like, why am I so tired when I'm eating
Yeah,
so much? And even if it was good stuff I was eating, but
exactly.
never got the break. Um, so there's a lot of fads out there. There's a lot of things people go for, and you know, this diet for this diet for this. Um, you know, the carnivore diet, which is just crazy in my mind.
In my mind too. Don't get me started on that one.
And
That's
but
nuts.
there's loads out there, like just super simply, like so people can really understand and take on. If they want to look at their plate, what should be on it?
Mm. Well, we do have different sorts of people. So we do have people that have a fast metabolism, a slow metabolism, or a metabolism that's neither slow nor fast. So I have sort of three pillars. I have a building diet, I have a cleansing diet, or I have a balancing diet. For someone with a fast metabolism, they do need a good protein source, right? So then we're up at maybe like, now we can talk about percentages of macros, but if we keep it simple, like you said, you want to look at your plate, half of your plate should be vegetables, steamed, preferably. So much better for your stomach and digestion. Some people are saying to me they have really bad digestion and they're not gluten intolerant. There's no real allergies. But if we look at some things in their diet, they can make food a little bit softer and more comfortable on their system. So steamed vegetables, just lightly steamed, keep all the vitamins and minerals in there. Half a plate of steamed vegetables is very, very good. Protein sources should be pure. So if you are eating meat, it should be grass-fed, it should be organic. You really need to look at where you're getting it from. Are you eating fish? Is it wild-caught salmon or is it farm-raised salmon? It makes a difference. You are going to get in your body all of the corn and soya that they feed to that farm raised fish. So if you're looking for having a balance with your essential fatty acids, but you're eating the fish that's basically raised on soya, you might actually be getting way too much omega-6 in your diet, which is also going to increase your inflammation in the body. So you asked for something simple and I went down the rabbit hole. It isn't super easy to give just a quick answer, but most people need a pure protein source, more fruits and veggies. And if you're having carbs, don't think about cereals and biscuits and rice and refined sugars. It should be yams and sweet potatoes and parsnip and beets and all the other great vegetables that are also just great carbohydrate sources. It's probably not simple enough,
This
Dr.
is
Tom.
really, it's brilliant, and it's isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? Because I remember, like, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe here, like corn-fed chicken became the rage.
Right. Okay.
You slam corn in the chicken, it becomes high in omega-6 and becomes very pro-inflammatory, like you were saying for the
Yeah.
fish. And then people
Mm.
trying their hardest to eat a great diet,
Yeah.
yet it's literally poisoning them in the long run.
Mm. And I
So,
mean, food is a business, right?
yeah.
Food is a big business. People that produce food want that food to last as long as it can last on the shelf at the grocery store. So it is prop full of things that we really don't need in our body. And like you're talking about with the inflammation, there's a lot of vegetable oils that are oxidizing, and we put them in the bread and the crackers and the cookies and the biscuits and the tortilla shells and all the things that last for many months on the shelf, but they don't serve us. They're just sort of empty calories. They're just fillers, and they're not nutrient dense. So eating for health means the food that you eat gives you the rainbow of nutrients, as opposed to SAD diet, standard American diet, beige food diet, whatever you want to call it.
I've never heard sad. That is brilliant.
It's
brilliant.
sad.
So it's amazing. We know what's on our plate. We know we should take the time before to breathe and to get the salivation going, get our bodies ready in our parasympathetic, our rest and digest state. What should we do after we've eaten? Is there anything we should be doing after we've eaten?
Right. That's a great question as well. I think you want to, you don't want to rush back into whatever you're doing. Like if you're taking a little pause at the beginning of your meal, you should have that same pause afterwards, you know? I love that about Europe. Like I'm originally from Canada, I'm living in Scandinavia. I find that in Europe, people will converse. They'll sit a little longer, you know? I think that's really important. I don't think you should slam down a really big protein drink, like a thick smoothie, and then jump on the elliptical trainer, you know? I mean, we're so in a rush. We're so at everyone else's beck and call, as well as our own. We make our own agenda and we are slaves to it. So I think it's really important to just honor where you're at. Like have a meal and don't eat until you're stuffed and you can't breathe, right? So I would say even before the meal is over, when you're about 80% full, you're done, you're full. Just like a washing machine needs a little space, right? To wash the clothes, your stomach needs a little space so that it can do the job to assimilate all those beautiful nutrients you put into it. So even before you're done your meal, be conscious the whole way through, even if you love it, even if it's your favorite dish, you know?
It's funny you say that, isn't it? Because even people who are trying to eat healthy, we're in this world that is so fast. We're like, I'm eating healthy, so I'm having a green smoothie. And they'll neck the green smoothie and then just get straight on with a busy day. It's like, you might be eating healthy to prolong life or keep healthy, but the stress that you're putting upon yourself and doing this is probably counteracting all the good nutrients that you put in anyway. And I love how you say, you know, get to 80% full. Like I remember being a kid, like, and I'm full up to here, like putting, you know, markers on my face and my nose and my eyebrows. I still got room for pudding, like, you know, stuff. And I think it all comes, my dad used to say, you know, my dad's a Yorkshireman. Yorkshire in England it's very stoic. It's very like, this is the way. And he'd always say two things. You know, if I gypped him for how big he was, and he wasn't a big guy, if I just gypped him, he'd be like, you know what, Tom, I'm built for siege warfare. I'm built to last. And he said, always eat your meal as if it is your last meal.
Wow. Yeah.
We just ate everything. A bad habit, but I suppose he came from a time where they ate what was available. Not everything is available. They ate what was available.
Absolutely.
So I suppose at that time, you know, it worked, but now as it translates into what, you know, we can get anything whenever we want, it probably doesn't work anymore.
Right. And I think that tradition is important to think about when you are realizing that you don't like your body composition, or you don't have the energy to do what you want to do. You have to look back into your past. You have to look at what you ate when you were a child. What was the norm? Like you said something about the markers going up. In my family, it was that you had a hollow leg. You must have one hollow leg if you have room for whatever the dessert, right? I mean, it's universal. But I also remember growing up with very strong men in my family, my grandfather, my uncles, and my stepfather, and we would literally sit down to eat, and this is what I would see as they shoveled in the food. They weren't conversing and enjoying and taking their fork and knife down and having having a conversation, and then there was no time for that. They just ate, right? And I think that, like you're saying, things are different now. And I know there's lots of different ways to eat, and there's the paleo diet, and there's a lot of ways to, sometimes it's good. Sometimes that's the recovery that you need. You need to go on something very strict. But I think what's important is to figure out, what did you eat in your area? What did your grandparents eat? Should you level up on some of those foods, on some of those dishes. You know, my grandmother would save lard. I'm sure a lot of grandmothers did that. If you cooked bacon, you'd have like a little thing of lard, like she would keep it.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of good fats and bad fats, and all of this could just take us down another rabbit hole. But again, you can level up most of those meals that your grandmother was making because she was preparing people for a long day out in the field or whatnot. We don't have that much physical activity in our day as our ancestors did. So eating this way with this super nutrient dense, high calorie food isn't good for us. Nutrient dense, but not so high calorie.
Yeah, and I suppose that is the factor of this Western world, like twofold. We don't have to actually get our food, so we don't have to exert energy to attain food. And then we have an overfed but undernourished population. I think that's what you're saying, like this calorie dense, but there's actually nothing to it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between I thought we had to think about calories, but now you're saying about nutrients. Just what is the difference? Like, it's a very simple, basic question for you and I, but for anyone who's like, well, what's the difference between calories and nutrients? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm. So a simple idea that most people understand is the difference between a smoothie and a juice. So if I take my Vitamix out and I throw in a couple bananas and I throw in some spirulina and you get a thick fibrous sludge, right? That's a smoothie. When you make a juice, you get less and it's high nutrient. So the smoothie is way more calories, right? Maybe I've put a couple of tablespoons of coconut oil in there. You can really get a lot of calories, a lot of nutrients as well. But I can walk out with one of those huge pitchers and I can ingest the same amount of calories as 2 meals in a smoothie. Whereas a juice, which should be maybe a shot or 2, it's very powerful. You don't need a glass of juice, really, if you're making it in a juicer. And that would be the difference. That would be the easy difference, I think. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So we don't, to get good quality, we don't need to be eating quantity. We can just, really, really get everything we need out of slightly smaller meals. So
I think it's really important to remember that, especially, I don't know, we're not as traditionalist as maybe back in the day, but I know that some men really feel like they need to have a big meal because they're men and they're still doing a lot. They're going to the gym, they have a long day ahead of them, they're racing all over town. But we know, I mean, it's backed by science. If you are eating enough grounding foods, the right amount of fat, the right amount of protein, the right amount, not too much, and you're getting all your nutrients, it should sustain you. You shouldn't have to eat large quantities of that eating for energy level 2, like 3 or 4 burgers, right? Because they're not actually real food.
And I suppose it is that two thing. You either eat for energy, or we think we're eating for energy, but it's actually just habit, isn't it? Like, snack now because I'm bored and I've got nothing else to do, so I'll just snack now.
Yeah, pleasure eating.
Yes. Yeah, which is the top one, isn't it? Yeah. So there's been some fascinating stuff in there, and it's really, I think you've really simplified it for our audience, which is brilliant. So I really appreciate that. And I know you've got so much more content and information to give. If people want to find out more about you and what you do and how you might be able to help, where can they get hold of you?
Oh, I'm easy to find. So I have a Facebook page. It's called The Friendly Plate. The website is also The Friendly Plate. So actually www.friendlyplate.org. And my Instagram handle is kristen.joy.moss. So send me a DM and any questions, and we'll see if we can get on a discovery call. I find for most people, and they need a little one-on-one in order to really, crack that code of what they've been doing that isn't serving them.
I completely agree, and we'll put those details in the show notes. And you're absolutely right, because you said right at the start, it's eating for the individual. It's important for the individual. So I love that you're accessible and you're opening up for a discovery call for people. So thank you very much.
No problem, my pleasure.
Is there any final words of wisdom that you'd love to leave our audience with today that would benefit them greatly.
I think most people know what they're doing that isn't serving them. I think it's about quieting down the mind, the monkey chatter, taking a moment before they grab for the unhealthy food, and really addressing some things that they're thinking about. If they're just putting in food that makes them feel awful, most people already know this. Stop doing that. Maybe it's an intolerance, but it might be an allergy. It might be worse than that, right? A lot of people eat foods that make them feel unwell. They just do it anyway because that's just how I am. Stop doing it. Talk to someone who can walk you through it. And even if you just need to go get a blood test from your local GP just to get some biomarkers, it's a great way to start.
Perfect. Kristen, thank you ever so much for being on the show. I really appreciate everything you've done. It's really helped me immensely, and I know it's going to help our audience exponentially. So thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.